Hey there, welcome in. It's another edition of the Stingers Up Sacramento State Football Podcast. We are back, getting ready for another Hornet game this weekend on the road at Fresno. Hopefully you get a chance to check out the Hornets and the Bulldogs this weekend in person, if not, certainly on TV and on the radio. Hornets start the year 0-1 with a loss last week to San Jose State, and the Bulldogs went to the Big House to take on the national champs. They lost that game as well. So both teams searching for their first win of the year. Today on the podcast, we will look back at last week's loss to San Jose State, talk about some of the key points of that one, and we'll get a preview of Saturday's game against Fresno State with their longtime voice, Paul Loeffler of the Fresno State Bulldogs, so you get that preview coming up. But first, let's start with a look back at last week's game, the opener. It's always a mystery when you begin a season how you're going to start. You don't know. You've only played against one another in camp. We said it last week. Offense had looked better in camp than the defense, but you just don't know until you face another team. So as we kind of go through our highlight recap of the game against San Jose State, fun atmosphere to be down there. Some Hornet fans made it down there. Cool to see Crazy George, a Bay Area legend, San Jose State legend, still alive and kicking and out there supporting the Spartans. But it was the Hornets that made the first impression against San Jose State. And on that first possession for the Spartans after the Hornets had to punt, the first turnover of the season.
Brown taking his time. High snap again, juggles it, collects it, looks deep ball, far sideline, good coverage, and intercepted! Jumping in front of it is Mervyn Kenyon III on the sideline in front of the Hornet bench at the 28.
Mervyn Kenyon III is a senior who came to the Hornets from Idaho, originally from Vallejo, California, which we'll be passing on our way home. That was fantastic. That ball was in the air. The receiver looked like he was going to be able to catch it because he adjusted to the ball well, but the free safety drifting over, making the interception. Mervyn Kenyon III, a new Hornet.
That was classic free safety play. That ball was hanging, and
Yes.
he has to make the play. He got over, closed the gap, and gets the first turnover of the season.
So the Hornets took that turnover and then got on the move. The offense started to click, and it really began up front. The offensive line was playing beautifully. The ground game was going well. And here's a nice run from Elijah Tau-Tolliver.
10th play of the drive, delay handoff goes to Elijah Tau-Tolliver, busts through the seam, inside the 20, to the 15, puts one hand down, and gets inside the 10 for a first and goal from the 8-yard line after the tackle by Pollard.
Well, I just said Soto and Meek, right guard and right tackle, and those two guys pulled on the play behind the left guard and tackle and opened up a big hole.
So that big gain set up the offense. Ultimately, the Hornets go big when they get near the goal line.
Hitting the midpoint of the first quarter, and look at this. This is the new version of the jumbo package for the Hornets.
Slater at left guard, Hayes at left tackle, but the Hornets are going to bring in some extras.
Yeah, Will Scaldi, it was a tight end, now has moved to the defensive line. He is going to go at the line of scrimmage. It's a handoff to Tau-Tolliver, runs right, goes low, crosses the goal line. He is in. Touchdown, Hornets. Good blocking off that right side, good ball control, 12-play drive, and the Hornets score off the turnover.
Oh, that's just beauty in motion right there. Your former great Folsom High School coach, Chris Richardson, he's an associate head coach, but the main thing is he coaches this offensive line that has been fantastic and one of the big reasons the Hornets have made the playoffs 4 years in a row. And that was a clinic by the offensive line on that drive.
So it's still first quarter. Tau-Tolliver on his way to a 100-yard rushing day, ran 2 scores in. So that's the first one. Hornets lead 7-0. Then the Spartans would make yet another first quarter mistake.
Emmett Brown works from the shotgun again for the Spartans. Hornets showing a 4-look. High snap goes over the quarterback on one bounce. It's loose, and the Hornets have recovered. No, it's still loose. It looks like there's a mad scramble. Everybody in the pile. Hornets claim they have it. No signal from the official. The ball is all the way back at the 15-yard line, and it's recovered by Sacramento State's Ben Ahio.
Yeah, Big Ben got it. Gavin Davis-Smith had a really good chance at it, but the ball is not round. It went over the quarterback's head. He deflected it, and then it was bouncing around awkwardly. And I thought Gavin Davis-Smith was going to get it, but then the big man comes up with it.
So the Hornets would capitalize on that mistake by the Spartans And Elijah Tolliver, here's TD, number 2.
31 points a game.
Here's a look we've seen before. 2 slotted wings on the edge. They'll send Tolliver in motion. They toss it to him. He goes right. He powers in. Touchdown, Sacramento State. The second one for Tolliver. And the Hornets lead 13-0.
Well, Soto may be a redshirt freshman on that right side of the offensive line, but he has been blocking supreme. He gets a piece of a touchdown on that.
You heard Steve at the end of that. Soto, unfortunately, was banged up on the play. That was kind of a theme of the night. The Hornets had some injuries, and there was some more significant ones if you were at the game or watched the game or listened to the game that happened all along. But after one quarter, after the Spartans scored, the Hornets still led 14-7. Now, early second quarter, some things to note. The Hornets were stopped on a 4th and goal at the inch line. They had some opportunities to really extend the lead, but didn't. And then they would get a field goal before the half. And still, this was also 1st and goal from the 10. And instead of getting a touchdown, the Hornets would get 3.
From the 18, a 28-yarder to try to go up 2 scores. The lead is 14-7. Snap placed down, the kick on the way, and it is true and good. Schreiner, nicely done. Hornets add 3 more on the board. And with 9:28 left in the second quarter, Sacramento State 17, the Spartans 7.
So Schreiner converts 17-7 at that point. The Hornets would give up a score right before the half. It's 17-14, and you're on the lead, on the road with the lead. You always feel good, but it felt a little incomplete. It felt like Sacramento's lead should have been larger. Well, the second half didn't go the beginning the way the Hornets wanted, as the Spartans scored for the first possession and took the lead 21-17 for the first time of the night. And after a Hornets turnover, it was now starting to feel like the game was completely starting to slide. Well, then the defense made a play, and this was really nice. Another turnover, getting the ball back for the Hornets.
Brown looking to his right, hit and denied it. The ball is knocked loose, and Sacramento State may have gotten it back. What a sack, hit, and fumble recovery all in one. I believe that was Fata Paluca.
Oh, Fata Paluca. The main thing was trying to hit the quarterback when you have such a clean shot on him and do it without getting a penalty these days. I hate to say that, but he hit him perfectly with the shoulder pad in the body. Didn't lead with the head, didn't lead with the forearm, and forced a fumble and recovered the fumble, all for the Monterey Trail High School, Sacramento, California player.
Freshman, too. Wow, what a hit.
Unfortunately, that would not net points. The Hornets would go down and miss a long field goal, about 50 yard from Schreiner, missed that one. And so after one more stop from the Hornet defense, then the offense would get going again. Caden Bennett, Elijah Tolliver, the offense moving down the field. Ezra Maleni, Karan Borders, the run game going well. But Bennett would scramble and get hurt, would have to leave. And here comes Carson Conklin, the Hornets playing the freshman who played in 4 games a year ago. And he would find another freshman and giving the Hornets the lead again.
11th play of the drive, 3rd down for the Hornets. They trail 21-17. Carson Conklin, he can really spin it. They love his arm. They love his future. The freshman is in to try to help the Hornets here on this drive. From the gun, 3 to his right, Conklin, 5-step drop. Lobs towards the end zone. Caught! Touchdown! Sacramento State. Danny Scudero gets his first touchdown. The officials have a flag down where Conklin threw it. So let's see if this holds up. A 20-yard catch and score for Scudero. And the Hornets sideline is celebrating. We're waiting for the official word. I think it's going to be a touchdown for the Hornets.
That was such a sweet pass. It was just, it had amazing touch on it from Conklin.
Well, we haven't
now
heard.
They're picking up the flag. No. Wow, we were watching the throw. I didn't even know it was roughing the passer. Roughing up the passer, and I didn't even notice he got hit. I was watching the ball.
What a throw. Good catch by Scudero.
I apologize to Conklin's parents that I'm sure they're here, but I was watching the throw, and I didn't even see that he got hit late.
I had mentioned last week how high the Hornets group was on Danny Scudero. Had a chance at a touchdown previously. Gets that one in the end zone, his first receiving one as a Hornet. So the Hornets had the lead 24-21 heading into the fourth quarter. And then the fourth quarter, things really started to derail a little bit on the Hornets. So you had the injuries mounting up. They gave up the lead with about 12 minutes to go in the fourth, and then the ensuing kickoff was really a frightening play. Michael Johnson had a nice return going on a full sprint and then just got absolutely rocked, lost the football. That seemingly at the time wasn't that important because there was all sorts of concern with Michael Johnson as he was knocked out. I mean, he was down immediately. Training staff for both the Hornets and the athletic training staff of San Jose State came out and followed all the protocols, and then you could just tell right away this was very concerning. And so he was treated properly, put on a board, put ultimately on a stretcher, carted out of the stadium, and just it stopped the game for a long time. But that's obviously the most important thing. You're worried about his immediate concern and health. And I can report now that Michael Johnson Jr., Michael Johnson only has a concussion. Now, that's for me saying that didn't get the concussion, but it looked frightening. You know, it's one of those things that you want to see how he's doing. He was released from the hospital that night and was back at practice, not practicing, but is going to be under concussion protocol watch. So, but good to see there. There were other injuries that mounted up through the night, but that also turnover then turned into more points. Now the Hornets are down 11, and kind of they lost their momentum. One last score was kind of meaningless, but it is a final score of an 18-point difference. Felt like a much closer game, but it was the Spartans that got the job done, defeating the Hornets. And so Sacramento State starts 0-1, San Jose State 1-0. One of the problems for the night, too, the Hornets got a little exposed in the back end of the defense. Secondary, Nick Nash was a tremendous receiver, but there were some open plays that the Hornets gave up, but also some others that could have been big plays that didn't happen. So that's something that certainly has to shore up for week 2. So now let's turn our attention to Fresno State. All right, let's get a preview of what to expect on Saturday from the opponent side of things. Fresno State Bulldogs will host the Hornets this weekend. Longtime voice Paul Loeffler joining us here on the Stingers Up podcast. Paul, I'm going to start with last week. I know we're kind of locking in on the Hornets and Bulldogs, but just for you, what an opportunity, and for the program to go to the Big House, take on the national champs, a game that had some chances for you guys, but just overall experience, what was it like for you? What was it like for Fresno State?
You know, it's a special place, and 110,000 people at a football game, that's something. And, you know, everything from the pregame flyover to the coordinated light shows to, you know, the times it feels like an earthquake in there, special venue, so much history. People couldn't have been more hospitable and accommodating. But at the end of the day, from a football perspective, you know, yeah, the Bulldogs cashed a check of almost $1.9 million, but they wanted to win that game, and they had chances. And it's probably pretty parallel to what the Hornets are feeling this week because, you know, Sac State had some chances to win that game in San Jose and had the lead. And Fresno State didn't have the lead, but had chances. You know, it was down 16-10 with 10 minutes to go. With 4 minutes left, they've got a first and goal to make it a 6-point game again and have all the momentum and make that defending national champion sweat a little bit when Michigan had struggled offensively all game, and the Bulldogs threw a pick six. So that's where the final margin of 30-10 came from. It was certainly much closer than that. And I think Fresno State came home feeling like, man, a couple plays here and there, and that would have been the victory you're talking about decades from now. So they're motivated, they're focused. They don't take the Hornets lightly. I mean, they saw the Hornets win at Stanford last year and at Colorado State the year before, and they have a feeling for the caliber of team and caliber of student athlete they're up against.
For Coach Skipper now, week 1, you don't always know exactly what you get, or you have until you play another team, and I think he would be pleased for the most part with some things that need to be cleaned up. But week 2 is kind of the transformation. Now what are we building on? So what do you think he would like to see improvements specifically for week 2 against the Hornets?
Well, I'd say on the defensive side of the ball, I mean, they couldn't be more pleased. They really shut down Michigan's running game for the bulk of that game. You know, they produced an interception. They played really well on defense, and they brought physicality, which was mission number 1 for Coach Skipper, who, you know, was a fantastic linebacker at Fresno State back in the day, second all-time in tackles. Spent a few years at Sac State under Coach Mushagian about 20 years ago, and so he has respect for the Hornets. So I think on the defensive side, it's, hey, do what you did last time and stay assignment sound against a very different challenge. You know, Michigan comes right at you. Sac State offensively is going to try to spread you out and get you confused and make you run sideline to sideline. But I think Fresno State's defense has the athleticism to handle that. on the offensive side of the ball, the Bulldogs need to be more efficient. Can't turn the ball over, need to run it better, and the quarterback needs to be more accurate. There were some makeable throws, there were some completable balls that didn't get completed. And, some of that's on the QB, some of that's on the target. But, the results speak for themselves, and they need to be better. And you have a quarterback who's preseason all-conference, who completed 67% of his passes last year. You expect that accuracy. And, the O-line was up against maybe the best front four in the country with 2 All-American defensive tackles in the middle. That was a big challenge. And that Bulldog offensive line is still missing maybe its most talented lineman in Jacob Spomer, who's probably a few weeks away. But you play with who you have. And I think their big mission in this game is to show that they can be an explosive offense.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to ask you about, Paul, because, you start a new year, you got a returner in Mikey Keene, you got a run game that I think they like, and some skill players at the receiver. You could see the elements, but it didn't really materialize in week 1 as much as they wanted. But it felt like, watching it, that was a lot of Michigan. I'm sure you won't play a better defense than that. So what's your overall read on what kind of offense you think the Bulldogs can have as you go through this season?
I think a lot of it depends on the line play and how consistent that group can be. And they have some veterans. You've got a 3-year starter at right tackle in Braylon Nelson. You've got a 5-year starter at center in Mose Vaval, whose, first year was the COVID year and cut short. You've got a 6th-year senior at left guard in Osmar Velez, and those guys are pretty reliable. And so you expect that group to be consistent, to protect the passer. If they do, last year, Mikey Keene, when he had time, he was picking defenses apart. He was very accurate. Michigan game, I think that's what we're waiting to see in this game. Was the Michigan game an aberration because of who Michigan is and how big Michigan is? But, they're reminded, too, you have to be assignment sound. Doesn't matter how much talent you have if you don't execute and if you don't have all 11 guys executing. Because the pick 6 that sealed that victory for Michigan by the Wolverines' All-American cornerback Will Johnson, the reason it was a pick 6 was one of the Bulldog receivers missed his block on that screen. So, one guy missing one block, that can change the outcome of a game. And so they have the talent, plenty of talent at the skill positions, plenty of depth at receiver, at running back. Cam Beecham is a tight end who I think is going to really come into his own this year. They have another 6th-year senior at tight end and Jake Faust. So they have guys they trust. It's just a matter of taking care of the football and executing a game plan. And for them to have a chance to play in front of the home crowd for the first time under Coach Skipper, I think there's going to be some serious energy in the house on Saturday night.
Yeah, home openers are special. You know that. Really all home games are, but the home opener at the start of a year, basically, after playing the defending national champs. What is the Valley's appetite for the 2024 Fresno State Bulldogs?
I'll tell you, I can't remember a time where the fan base had more enthusiasm, and it's an interesting time because Coach Tedford was so popular, so successful. He made a lot of history here. Coming back to his alma mater, it was the first coach ever to inherit a 1-win program and lead it to back-to-back 10-win seasons. And then he leaves for health reasons, comes back, makes some more history, in 2022 when their quarterback and their defensive captain get knocked out seemingly for the season at USC. But both end up coming back later in the year, and Fresno State becomes the first team ever to go from 1-4 to a 10-win team. And so, what Coach Tedford did here cannot get enough credit. And then he has to step down again, and you would think that's a big, air out of the sails, but it's been the opposite with Coach Skipper, who is such a popular player, has such a magnetic and charismatic personality. $1 million smile doesn't say enough about the charisma he brings to a room. And we saw it at the kickoff dinner this year. I can't remember a more enthusiastic crowd. When he got up there and talked, it was like everybody in that room was ready to go to war for the guy. I was the auctioneer that night. I can't remember a night where we raised more money for the program. So there's some serious enthusiasm for Fresno State football. And last year, the Bulldogs led the country in attendance outside the power conferences. So that's kind of the mission for this year, is be able to go back-to-back in that department, whether you're playing, a Mountain West rival or a neighbor like Sac State. So it doesn't matter who the opponent is. I think the message that's getting out is Valley fans, the Red Wave, as they call them here, need to pack that stadium game in, game out. So I expect it to be pretty full for the Hornets on Saturday night.
That's going to be fun. I know I'm looking forward to it. It's been fun on our trips down there. Should be a warm evening as usual. But, game 2 for each team to kind of see where their seasons are going. Paul, always appreciate you taking the time. Look forward to seeing you on Saturday, and we look to have some fun this weekend.
Absolutely. The previous games have been exciting. I was looking at my chart the other day, Jason, and Deron Bland started at corner for Sac State against Fresno State the last time the Hornets were here. Now they're both bragging about him having a record-breaking year in the NFL and hoping he gets healthy soon. But it's a cool rivalry. I hope it's a great experience for the Hornet fans. It's one of those things I hope we see continue for years to come. And, safe travels. Look forward to seeing you.
Thank you, Paul. That is Paul Loeffler, voice of the Bulldogs. Look forward to seeing him this weekend, and the Fresno State fans and the bands and all that, and the Hornet fans that make the trip down to Fresno State, down the valley there, and check out. It's not a rivalry per se, but I could see how this could become one as college football continues to change, and who knows down the line if realignment and configuring. But this kind of makes some sense for these schools to be paired together. But it's a non-league game. It's a game where the Hornets get paid. They are underdogs. And I will say Fresno State looked good last week against Michigan, specifically their defense. Their offense is going to feel better not going against Michigan's defense. So it will be a tough one for the Hornets, but we'll see how they improve from week 1 to week 2, and we'll be back next week to recap it all. But thank you so much for listening to another edition of the Stingers Up Sacramento State Football Podcast. I'm Jason Ross. Enjoy the game this week. We'll talk to you next week. Stingers Up.